All right. Once you know what you want to say with your spot illustration for your poster for assignment 6, like Keen Gaming, right? You might have the name of a corporate entity in mind. That could be a promotional poster for a company. Then you want to find inspirations. So looking at our modernist monsters, right? I was doing kind of an Art Deco and Art Nouveau, early 20th century art style. The early 20th century is where we have the birth of what is called modern type design. Bauhaus is maybe the most famous. What modern type is type that doesn't have any decorative serifs. It's sans serif type. And this is a nice example of a modern type, the guilty party. You see in their concept sketches, this is by a typographer named Rye Ford, you can see that they use some script type, they use some serif decorative types, but the one that they liked the most was this kind of more zany version of a modern type approach. And then they designed the negative space around it, just like you would for a logo, and they turned it into a vector, and then you have the finished design here. Here we have Shepard Fairey, and Shepard Fairey also designs their own type to go with the project, right? Here we have just a very slight serif to make it look more traditional. Here we have just a very blocky modern type to make it incredibly clear. Here we have modern type, but it is split up on different text axes, right? It avoids horizontals and verticals to make it more dynamic and make you like decode it a little bit. And here you have an italicized version, which is based on maybe the most famous type design and graphic design of the 20th century, which is Barbara Kruger, who later got copied by so her work was in the 80s. This is her most famous piece. And she used Helvetica, but then customized and used it as in her graphic design activist artwork. And then you might recognize it because her type design was copied without permission by the clothing brand Supreme. And basically, Supreme kind of made its whole label copying other people's designs and just branding it with their own label. But even their label is intentionally a copy, a recognizable copy of Barbara Kruger's work, right? But Supreme isn't the first to do that. Shepard Fairey, the same guy who got sued by the Associated Press for his Obama Hope poster, right? Very early, while he was still a student at Rhode Island School of Design, was copying in the 90s, was copying Barbara Kruger's type design. So why did Supreme use Barbara Kruger's design? Barbara Kruger was an 80s kind of activist guerrilla designer. For the same reason Shepard Fairey used it for street art, they're trying to be more like street fashion coded, right? Even no manufacturers of Supreme are domestic or related to urban renewal projects or anything like that. But they're trading on that feeling, right? Which is non-normative for high fashion. So inspirations really matter. The inspiration I found was not original Art Nouveau posters. Those are really cool. Because those go back all the way to like the 1880s. So these were some of the original ones, right? Because the type design was all hand done, but not necessarily super interesting by today's standards. We're a little bit more sophisticated. This is all about the imagery, right? And the type design was not usually done by the artists. So this is from 1807. This is Alphonse Mucha's artwork, but someone else did the type, and the type just doesn't fit with it very well. So instead, I looked at how Art Nouveau influenced 1960s posters because it had a resurgence, especially in kind of psychedelic rock and the illustrations of the 1960s. So this is the kind of Art Nouveau inspired type and poster design I'm looking at to go with my illustration. And the text I'm going to use is always changing. So there's lots of inspirations. You'll notice a lot of these trace traditional. This is traditional Art Nouveau. This is a 1960s poster, right? Concert poster. And they just trace the original figures, but then they fit their type in a much kind of freer way, right? Kind of like doodles. And what I love about this type design is it's really about 50-50 in visual interest between the text and the imagery. So I want that kind of feeling for my poster. I want the text to be almost as interesting as my image, but I'm going to put my image on top because my image has a lot of cool negative space, which is something you see a lot in Art Nouveau design, modernist design. But it's not going to work for me to just have a simple solution, right? So when you do text blocking, you usually do it by hand. You can just see my little sketch here. And you're looking at inspiration. So what is my inspiration for how I do my text? It's this kind of thing. You pick a shape and then you break it into the text you want. But this is another way you can approach it. If I have my tablet here, I'm going to make a new layer behind my spot illustration that I just brought in from assignment 5. And I'm just going to fill that new layer with white to give me a blank slate. And now I'm just going to try some different text blocking on top of it. And I'll go ahead and turn off my spot illustration too. So this is my poster format. A poster format, a most standard poster format is 18 by 24 inches. Standard American. (18 by 24). The largest, which is what you see up on the board, is around 24 by 36, but can go all the way to 27 by 40 inch if you don't have any trim cut. What we're going to design, because our paper goes up to 17 by 22 inch, we're going to design it to be 16 by 20, which is about the ratio you want. So I can take my image, go to image size. Doesn't really matter the resolution, but I'm going to make it 16 inches wide by 20 inches tall. And I'll go ahead and make it, let's say, 120 pixels per inch. Actually, I can make it more than that. Let's make it 240. Nope, it's too much. Let's make it 200. This is really just to get the aspect ratio. And notice, in order to stretch it, I have the padlock on image size unlocked. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so now, this is my 16 by 20 format. Notice the rectangle. It's basically a golden rectangle. It should work pretty well. I could put my illustration there and then design underneath it. Why don't I start with that? My thinking is, I'm just using my brush, I'm using a pressure-sensitive brush. I want it to kind of squeeze in like this. Be a reverse arc underneath to complement the curve. And to kind of go around like that. So this is text blocking. You draw a block around the text before you do the text itself, and then you figure out how to fit your letters in, just like they were stamps. So the A would go there, the L might go here, the W, the A, the Y, and I let it start to get pinched off into the corner. This is non-normative, that it's not going to line up as it goes. I'm not worried about how the letters look. I'm worried about the space they take up. This is text blocking. I might even decide I want that A to have more presence, so I'm going to push its top line higher. And then underneath it is going to be a C. And I always use capitals for text blocking because capitals have their own kerning built in. And you see how I'm drawing the space around the letters more than I'm drawing the letters themselves. Now the problem with always changing is that changing has more letters than always. So at some point, I'm going to do it now, it has to get kind of compressed. Better at the end of it than at the beginning. And that I is going to be really big. And then that G at the end is going to mirror the A. And take up a lot of space, right? So it's these sweeps. Now, is that really, really different than this? It has one important difference. This text block is squeezed at the sides, whereas this one is more organic all the way around. It's hard to say if there's a better or worse solution. It's kind of what you're feeling, what you're going for. But your text blocking can also be different arrangements. So what if I make it more like this, where I want my text to be more organic, kind of Art Nouveau-ish, and it takes up kind of a fairly symmetrical shield shape at the top. Right? How would I break it up? So I'm going to have an A here, and then always, and I'll nest the W above the N. Make the always really, really strong. Play with different heights. And then changing becomes secondary, right? Maybe it becomes a little bit thinner, maybe a little bit more kerning between each one. So the letters on top feel crowded, but underneath, I'm going to do a high waist. And then as it compresses at the end, you just want to make sure you have space for everything, designing it out. And then the G becomes pretty decorative at the end. Okay. So always changing. Obviously that doesn't work with the placement there, so I can make a duplicate of it. And I can try this text blocking with the placement underneath. Right. Make sense? I could try it to the side. I can try it tilted. I want you to try to do at least kind of 3 text blocking sketches before you decide on your approach. It's not a requirement. It's going to make it a better poster. And then I might decide, okay, I like both of those. But I want to move them all down, and then I want to add a decorative border. So I might say, okay, I want to add kind of an Art Nouveau border around it that kind of fills in these corners. It's maybe open at the bottom, like 2 columns. And that's the poster design I want. And then I see an opportunity here where my always changing can echo the crown in the design. You see that? So sometimes you'll just see things as you're designing. So my W can be a little bit non-normative to look like a crown. And honestly, I think I like that approach best so far. So let's see, I have 3 approaches. I'll hold down Option and Layer Merge Visible so I can compare each one. So there's that approach. There's